This week, as promised, I've come back to how to fix mistakes, and this week we're going to talk about yarn overs. And this is a swatch that my students do in lesson 2 of the basics class, and it's a couple of things are going on here. We have yarn overs, and then we have 2 different types of decreases right here. In class, they actually do 3 different types of decreases, but one of the things that students often will have trouble with is how to make a yarn over in the first place. And a yarn over is between 2 stitches. I had a student once who thought that wherever she saw yarn over in the pattern, it meant make a yarn over and knit the next stitch. But that is not the case. When you see yarn over, that means simply put the yarn between the 2 stitches and then work the next stitch. And that would not be included in the directions. Well, it would be the very next step in a chart. But if you do it the way that my student did, you're going to run out of stitches pretty fast. So that's how I make a yarn over between 2 knit stitches. I bring the yarn forward. Now, if I'm on the wrong side, I bring the yarn for the back. It just depends on how you do it. Now I'll work to the end of this row. Now I'm looking at this, and down here, I notice that in my little triangle, I've got yarn over, yarn over, yarn over, yarn over. I got 1, 2, 3, 4 yarn overs. 1, 2, 3, 4. And over here, 1, 2, 3, oops, I'm missing a yarn over right there. And there are a couple of ways that I can fix this. I can undo my work up to here, but I've got this rather tricky decrease that I don't want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work to where that yarn over would be. And I'm just purling. And when I get to the location where that yarn over should be, and I'm going to probably have to look at the right side of my work, it's right here. Now notice that I have this horizontal bar between the decrease and the next stitch. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put that on my needle, and I'm going to work it. Now, the problem with this is that when you do that, it's not a real yarn over that you've got there. So it's going to have less yarn in it. And so depending on the pattern, it might not look great. Sometimes it is better just to suck it up and go back, because that yarn over, the lacy hole there, it might be smaller. Now in this case, there was enough slack that really, I think I'm going to get by. It's slightly smaller, but it's not all that noticeable. Now in this swatch too, I've got some other locations where I am missing yarn overs. Notice I've got 1, 2, 3, and I'm missing a yarn over. It looks right here. If you notice how these yarn overs look, I've got a yarn over and then these 2 threads, a yarn over, and then this is where that next yarn over should be. And then over here, it's the same thing, 1, 2, 3. I am missing the yarn overs, and I need to take them back. Now, a word of advice that I can give you is always to use lifelines with lace. But another thing is examine your pattern. And in most lace patterns, unless it's a complicated pattern, you're going to have the same number of stitches every row. So for example, I'm putting 2 yarn overs in here, but I am making a double decrease. So I start with the same number of stitches. And until you get familiar with a lace pattern, what I would recommend that you do is count the number of stitches after every row you've worked. That will make it easier to make sure that you don't wind up with a situation like this. Now again, if I'd put in a lifeline, I could rip it out and go to that spot. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go and create a yarn over out of a location where there is not a yarn over. Now this is what I'm going to do first, is to kind of loosen up all of these stitches. And because this yarn over that I missed is down here, and then I work 2 more rows after it, I'm going to need to create a yarn over here, and I'm going to need to create stitches out of those horizontal bars. And I want to create my yarn over, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go under the bottom horizontal bar that I see, and I'm going to pull up a stitch using those 2 bars. And then I'm going to do the same over here, and I'm going to create a stitch, and put it over there. Now again, with any time that you're fixing work and you're creating, look what I did there, I dropped that yarn over, so I'm gonna have to create it. I'm just demonstrating everything that can possibly go wrong here. I like to do a full service video. Okay, and I'm going to put that stitch back on there. Now the problem with this, as you can see, is that those stitches from where I created those yarn overs are going to be fairly pinched. They're pinched and small. They're not going to be exactly the same size. But the good thing about lace is that it's so pretty, is that often people don't even notice that sort of thing. Now I've got the same thing going on over here, so let's slide over there and fix it. And if you have trouble seeing where you need to make those yarn overs, again, the lifeline, and I've done videos on that, is the best way to go. So I'm going to loosen up so that I can see those horizontal bars. I'm going to insert my needle. In that one, I'm going to pull the top loop through, and then I'm just going to do the same thing over here. And this time I'm not going to drop that stitch. Okay. Oops. Again, sometimes this is going to be difficult because you don't really have enough slack yarn to create it. Now, in point of fact, you can really avoid doing this far back if you look at your work. And so when you're working with lace in particular, I would have a photo of what that lace looks like, and I would compare my work to it. Now notice I do have my yarn overs, 1, 2, 3, 4, but those stitches are really kind of pinched. I've got something oversized there that doesn't match up, but you know, depending on how picky you are, it would pass. Now by the way, this has not been blocked, and that would enhance that appearance a bit.